There we go. All right, I think we're finally ready to go. I hope. Sorry about that big time sink there. First of all, a lot of people who might not be here, so I don't know if you,
Are we sending in?
so we sent an email out. Tell you what, if you are there, try raising your hand. There's a little button. How do you raise your hand? It's muted. Oh. Unmuted. Okay. Oh, I see some hands coming up. That's good. That's good. Lots of hands. Okay. Well, I'm really sorry about all the confusion here. All right. We might wait just another minute to see, let's see, Jordan's not there as far as I can tell. It's like Margaret Thomas isn't online. There's a lot of people logged in who haven't raised their hands yet. And I don't know if they're away. Let's see. Oh, yes. Oh, there's Alan Baker. Good. Hi, Alan. And Barry Floyd still apparently not there. Clark Neuendorf. Oh, there's, okay, Barry. Good. Thanks. Donald Thomas, Ian Maiden. So it's like Oregon guys are offline maybe. All right. Looks like we've got most of us here now. We'll be recording this and putting up a transcript like we've done with the other presentations, so that if you didn't get in here, you can come back later and check it out. So anyway, starting over again, we just wanted to talk a couple of topics today, a little bit about some of the issues with data delivery that we've been seeing, discussing the use of the templates, and then a little bit of review about the identifiers, the URIs, and also the metadata for the data sets that are coming in. I wanted to talk a little bit about the geochemical data templates that we're hoping to get out. We've been testing, it seems like for weeks now, trying to get set up on a system for doing the geochemical data with the web services in a systematic way. And then finally, the big news is the new website is finally rolled out, and we'll spend a few minutes talking about some of the features of that website, mostly about managing your user profile, and also if you don't have an account there, how to get one set up. And we'll also be reviewing the file upload feature that we have on the website now. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about using the template. So, and since I had to close everything in the process of doing this, now I'm going to have to go and open Excel again and bring up a template. And let's try borehole temperature observations. So this is the template that we've been using for compiling information about boreholes. One of the issues that we've had with the templates for the wells is the fact that we have there's three templates right now. There's a well header template, this borehole temperature observation, and then the well log information template. And there's a fair amount of overlap between those. And the reason that we have those, and I've realized this over the course of the last few weeks, is that there's sort of two functions that are being served here. One of which is as a spreadsheet that's useful for compiling information, and the other is the template that we're actually using for the data delivery in the web services. And so this borehole temperature observation and the well log information template, which I won't bother to open, both have a lot of have all the same fields that are in the well header information, and they also have some additional information. And the logic is that well log information spreadsheet, maybe I should open it up, is designed as really a data compilation spreadsheet. And that for that reason, it has all the information that you need to build the borehole temperature, to build the metadata record for a well log, or also to do a temperature observation. So let me bring up that well. So these are and what we'll do on the new website now that it's up and running, and we can get it out there. What's going on here? Oh, I was trying to open it in PowerPoint. This is just not my day. Sorry. That was supposed to be Excel. We'll just go back and look at this. And the borehole temperature observation is the same. That it's got all this mud resistivity and stuff related to temperature observations, in addition to all the header information that's associated with the borehole. Try to keep my windows straight here. Make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Anyway, within each of these templates, there's a series of tabs which we're trying to be systematic about. And the first tab is this one that says About, and there's one is the title block, which has the name of the template and a little description of what it's for, the editors for the template. It keeps track of the version number. This version number here is the version number for the template, and that has to do with the fields that are present in the actual data table. So the versioning there is on, think of that as being the version of the data schema, not the version of the data in the table. Now, that might become a little bit clear as we go along here. Then we have these revision history blocks down here that we've been using to keep track of the evolution of the template as we go in and fix things or modify how it works. And so there's a revision history. And in some of the older templates, there was just one revision history block. And the problem we ran into is there's two revision histories we want to follow. One is the revision history for the template, which is the data schema, the fields that are in the table. And the other that we need to follow is the actual revision history for the data that get compiled in the table. So when you actually start putting data in the table, in general, you'll probably find that you actually want to record the history of what data you've got in that template, how it got there, who's edited it. If you have your own internal QA process, you can keep track of who's reviewed the data that are there and what kind of modifications they had to make and what the state is. So you can use the data revision history here for your own internal accounting to keep track of what's going on. Another recommendation we'd make is that when you do start putting data in the template, you change the title up here from the name. Instead of the name of the template here, you substitute and put in the name, your state name. So instead of saying borehole temperature observation feature, or most of these should say something template, it would say New Jersey borehole temperature observation features in the title block here. And that way it'll be, it helps to keep track of what's in there when you're looking at the title block. So that's what goes on in this About tab. And I'd really recommend trying to use the data revision history here to keep track of what's happened and what you've done with the content that's in that template. The second tab is called Notes. It's really, maybe it should be called Instructions. Mostly what you'll find there is a list of all the sheets that are in the template and what their purpose is. On some of them, we've managed to also add some additional instructions. As time goes on, hopefully we'll be able to amplify the instructions in there as we develop these a little bit more. The third tab that will be in each one of these is called Resource Provider Information, and I think in some templates, we're still not entirely, haven't made everything consistent. In some templates, it's called Dataset Metadata. And the information here is information about the data set that are in this template. And the content here, the contact person, the organization name, all this information will be used in building the metadata record for the data set. And I'll talk about that in a little bit later, but the point is that each one of these templates, once they're populated with data, will go to two places. On the one hand, it will be used to set up a data service that will be one of our web feature services for delivering that data online as a service. And the other thing we do with them is the data set itself in this spreadsheet will get put into one of the repositories and have a metadata record created for the data set that actually, and the intention of that metadata record on the data set is to say where the data came from, who compiled it, quality information about the information that's in that data set. So once the data get deployed as a web service, then there'll be two metadata records that are important about that data. One will be a metadata record for the service, which will have the information about how do you connect to the service, what's the URL, who put the service online, who's hosting it, who do you contact if there's some problem with the functioning of the service. And that service metadata record will have a link to a metadata record that describes the data that are served by the service. And the thing to remember is that for the most part, what we're doing right now is that we have each service is only serving one data set. But in the larger service architecture we're developing, it's entirely possible to have one service endpoint that's serving a lot of different data sets. And as the system scales up, we'll probably start doing that. So then what you'll have is a service metadata record that describes a web feature service or a web map service, but there might be 10 or 15 data sets that are accessible to that service. So the metadata for those data sets is linked to the service metadata, but there are separate metadata records for the data set metadata. So there's two resources that you're describing with these metadata records. One is the service, which is basically a software application that lets you access data, and the other is the metadata describing the data, the content that's delivered by that service. In general, when you're searching for information, what you're interested in is that content. So in the metadata record for the data sets, it will list different distributions. So that's the distribution is how you access the data. And let's see, I don't think we actually, no, these don't have distribution in it. But in the metadata record, there's a section called distribution. And so for the data that are loaded in templates, there will be two distribution points. One will be the original metadata spreadsheet, the data spreadsheet template that's put in a repository. That's the sort of first representation of the data set. The second distribution for that data set will be through the web service. So the data set metadata record will have a link to the web service as a distribution for that data set. So you end up with these two metadata records that are cross-linked between each other. And the important one is actually the data set metadata, because in general people are looking for the information. They don't go searching for a WMS and then say, oh, what does this WMS have? So that's why the resource provider information is important. That gets used to build the data set metadata for the content in this record. Finally, each of these will have the actual data content will have a name here. This one says borehole observation. That's the name of the feature that will be created from the content on this spreadsheet. And in this case, everything will have some kind of URI that's an identifier for each record in this table. So since these are observations, it's called an observation URI. That will be some kind of, what we're using are those HTTP URIs that look like web addresses, and we're setting up our dereferencing service so that if you click on one of those HTTP URIs in a web browser, it can actually be dereferenced and will give you the WFS response for that observation in this case. Or if you happen to have a nice HTML page that will display the same results, you can have the URIs dereferenced to that for HTTP records. All of these actual data templates have one or more source fields, and in this case there's a measurement source. Since this is an observation, the idea is that this provides a way for each record to report some specific metadata about that particular measurement. In a lot of cases, the measurement source will be the same for every record, but if you're compiling information that's coming from different publications, there might actually be different measurement source citations associated with different records in the table. So the idea here is that this measurement source content will provide some guidance on where each individual data record came from. Sometimes there's more than one. In this case, there's an information source record, and we're trying to be consistent. There should be an information source in every one of the templates as well. And the intention of the information source is to say who actually compiled what you see in this table. So in some cases that might be the same if you're just copying it from an existing database, that the measurement source data is not different from the information source. But in our case, where we're bringing together and compiling, let's say, borehole temperatures from well logs and from other compilations, then the person we have working here on doing the data compilation puts their information in this information source field, say who did the compilation, how they got the information, what kind of processing they did, as opposed to the measurement source, which describes the procedure that was used to acquire the actual data. Moving along here, all of the templates have a data mapping view tab. And again, I don't think we're 100% consistent about this. It might be called a field list in some of the templates. But this is just a list of all the fields that appear in the template with a text description of what, what's in that field, and hopefully some guidance on how to use it. You've probably noticed there are these little red corners in a lot of the cells on the spreadsheet. Yeah, we can make those a little bigger. So you see these little red corners that show up. If you mouse over a cell that has one of those, you'll see some information about the cell. And that's true. So you see those little red corners here. But also, if you're looking at the spreadsheet here, most of the columns, we try to get it in all the columns, will have, if you mouse over the column heading, you'll find out something about what's supposed to be in that column and what kind of formatting or measurement units or other information is useful for populating that. The other thing in the spreadsheet here is you see these columns that are colored pink. This is how we indicate required content. So the columns that are pink are required to have content here. And this doesn't have the conditional formatting set up. On some of them, when you actually put something in there, it stops being pink, so you know you're done. But in general, this one, they're just colored pink. So you can see there's a measurement procedure, the citation for where the measurement came from, the actual maximum recorded temperature if it's a bottom hole temperature. But in other cases, you might have a measured temperature if you have a temperature log. And the information sources. We try to keep the number of required fields down to a minimum. And the reason there is, I mean, the thinking is that if there's not content in one of these required fields in a given record, that record's going to get rejected. So we're pretty liberal about how sparse the information can be. And so, for instance, in a borehole temperature record, the temperature is required, or it better be required. Yeah, so you have to have a temperature. If you don't have a temperature in a borehole temperature observation, there's not much point in putting the record online. So let's see, data mapping view. And then the final one is data valid terms. And this will appear on almost all the sheets. And what's on this worksheet will be vocabularies to use for populating other fields. Initially, we were trying to set up the fields so that you would see pick lists. Yeah, you would see pick lists here, the way you can set them up in Excel using data validation features in Excel. But the problem is if you move data back and forth between 2003 and 2007, some of those data validation features get lost. So right now we're just putting these in the back, and in general, if there's a field that has a vocabulary on the data valid terms tab, the comment that you see when you mouse over will tell you that there's a vocabulary for it. So, status well type, retext, specify the well type. Anyway, well, these should say, but they don't. So there's always more to fix. But that's the idea. And if you define terms that you're using as you're populating your own data, it would be important to actually list the terms that you're using back here and give definitions for them so that we know we're clear on what the content is about. So that's a sort of fast-flying run-through one of the templates, and this is the pattern we're trying to follow on all these templates. And because it's an evolving system, some of them are caught up and we've made consistent, and some of them are still in using older formats that we're trying to abandon, but we may not have abandoned yet. Let me just check here. Data map, we talked about all the sheets, talked about tracking the history, we talked about the file name. Okay, identifiers. The URIs in the field names on these templates and in the data sets that we're dealing with, there's a certain amount of, maybe you call it social engineering, I don't know what, but the fields that we have that have this URI at the end, the intention is that those have globally unique identifiers in them. And that what we're doing with those is mapping them into HTTP URIs, and I call it that's a universal resource identifier. That starts with HTTP:. And the nice thing about these kind of identifiers is that if you plug one into a web browser, it will try to find something that represents what that identifier is supposed to be about. So what we've done is with the when we set up the services with the well headers, if you dereference a header URI, then you get some kind of representation for the well. For a lot of states, that representation might just be an XML file that's the WFS response for that well header feature. But for states that have online web pages for each well that are individually accessible with a URL, we can have that identifier dereferenced to show you the web page. And I think that's working for Kentucky and California, and what other states have we got that set up with at this point? I guess
Oregon.
Oregon's working, and so if you do have some states, the oil and gas commissions or whatever, they'll have a CGI kind of application that doesn't actually access each well information with a unique URL. It's based on an application state, and so we can't set up those URIs that way. So that's the idea there. With the observation identifiers in general, they will dereference just to give you the XML for an observation record, but you could also set up little HTML pages, and as long as we can deduce from what's in the HTTP URI enough information to rewrite that to give the URL for where that web page is, the URI can dereference to produce a web page, which is friendlier for people looking at the information in a web browser. Let's see, one of the other things is adding the prefixes for authorities, so I'm going to bring up Excel again. Well, what's going on there?
Oh, they were on the CD.
Oh, yeah, okay. I didn't take those off the CD. That's too bad. Let's get a different one. Okay, so this is what I wanted. Let's just take a look at. So this is Florida borehole temperature data. Not meaning to pick on anybody in particular, but just grabbing the first one that caught my fancy. So in here, basically, this is set up. Make this bigger. And the normal pattern we follow is if there are API numbers for a well, that's what we use for generating the URI. So for instance, with these Florida ones, I copy this guy, pop it in a browser here. Let's see what happens. That doesn't work. So Celia will be reviewing this to figure out why in a very few minutes. I don't know what do you think is going on there, Celia?
Oh, I'm not sure.
Okay, let's try the The observation, yeah, okay, there. So for the observation URI, basically it looks it up, it rewrites it and returns the XML that is, if you look at it, you'll see that all the element names in this XML document are the column names in the spreadsheet. So that's what, in the data delivery templates, that's how it's working, is that the column names in the spreadsheet are actually determine the XML schema. So the XML elements in the data delivery document are the same as the column names in the spreadsheet. That's why we're calling them data delivery templates. And what we'll start doing is distinguishing those from data compilation spreadsheets that might be used to generate more than one data delivery package. That happens through this, at the resources.usgin.org website, we've got a dereferencing application running that uses regular expressions and rules to rewrite the incoming URIs into the URLs that point at the locations that actually have the useful representation we want to give back to the user. All right, one in metadata. We've gotten some data delivery packages that have bundles of documents which are likely to be useful that we would post online to be accessible to the system, but we need to have metadata records for those. So every online document that is posted, and whether that's a spreadsheet of a template or a scanned well log or a scanned permit file for a well, or every document that's meant to be individually accessible should have a metadata record. So as you're putting together your data delivery packages, you have to bear in mind that one way or another we need to have metadata for each one of those documents that are going to be made available. And usually it can be done if you have some systematic way of naming the documents, so there's something in the metadata record that you can use as the end of the URL for the actual file location. Then we can assemble the URLs at the end of the process when all those files actually get loaded on a web server somewhere by just taking the host name for that server and whatever the file path is on the server as a prefix and adding the suffix for the particular file name that's already in the metadata record. And in order for those documents to be considered delivered, there has to be a metadata record in the catalog such that you can search for that document in the catalog.usgin.org or some other online catalog. If you have another CSW catalog operating somewhere, that would be equally valid. I don't know if anyone else is doing that yet, but the idea is that once a document is posted and part of the system, you could go in here and find the document in the catalog. So I just did a random search for California. So here's a geologic data map from California, and let's see if it'll actually open up. In this case, they don't actually have the documents posted online. It takes you to their website. But that's the idea, is that the final product is done when the document is accessible online, and there's a metadata record for it that gets you to it. Oh wow! All right. We talked about the measurement source and measurement procedure for observation, so I won't belabor that. And geochemistry data. This has been really problematic, and of course the issue is that there are so many possible things you might analyze for. So we call those the analytes, and that's, I think, fairly normal usage. And what we've converged on is the idea that there's going to be a collection of basic properties that are associated with any chemical analysis that describe the sample, where the sample was collected, what the sample is supposed to represent, which might be the name of the geologic unit, or it might be an aquifer or a hot spring, or it might be a borehole. And then who collected the sample, and what's the analytical procedures, and sort of the background information that applies to all the results in that analysis. And then what we do is take groups of analytes and bundle them together in suites. And this has been based on, well, we've done, for instance, what we're doing with a lot of the aqueous geochemistry. If you hold on a sec, I've got to open that up again. So this is the aqueous geochemistry template, which hopefully will be hitting the streets sometime in the near future. We've got the suites that we have defined in here have come from two different sources, one of which is the USGS hot spring chemistry data delivery has essentially taken this same approach. And so what we've done is just adopted the various suites that they already have defined there. So there's a basic data, major dissolved constituents. You can see the ones that say USGS over here. And so we've got all of those in here as possible suites. And then the other one, we've added a couple of them by looking at collections of aqueous geochemistry data that we got from Arizona and California, and just looking at, okay, which constituents most commonly appear in these analyses. And that's this common analytes. And it's just sort of an empirical compilation of stuff that seems to show up in most of the analyses that we had access to in the course of doing this. But the other thing we're doing then is with these data delivery suites is that within any given suite, all the units of measurement will be the same. So what we've done is, for instance, you'll notice each one of these analyte names actually has a unit of measurement appended to the field name. So these are all milligrams per liter, and this has been one of the things, is trying to figure out a rational way of doing this based on studying data sets that we could find online and looking at the kind of data. So we're going to put this out for review soon, and we've been testing it by getting the California data and the Arizona data set up, and that should be online sometime pretty soon, I think. I don't know, what's your read on that, Celia?
Yeah.
Sometime, hopefully, I don't know, this week?
Maybe. Yeah.
Well, we'll get some of those up there as examples, and what we'll need is for everyone to take a careful look at that, and we need to get some feedback. One issue is about, when do you use milligrams per liter and when do you use micrograms per liter for some of these less common sorts of constituents. So that's the course. If you look at this template, you see it has, again, there's the about, there's a template history, which goes on for a ways, and then a data history. We don't have any data history in here because we're not doing data. This has a little bit of instructions, list of the sheets. We also are adding in some of these, and they'll start appearing everywhere, reviewer notes that we'll put in when we get sample data. This is where we'll add comments and things about things in the data that need to be reviewed or fixed when we review data sets. So that'll start appearing in the data sets when they're delivered and we review them. And that's why, remember, get that sample data to us early and often so that we can fix problems early in the compilation process. Here's the tab that has the basic properties for all the analysis. So again, there's an analysis URI, which identifies that particular analysis. There's sample description information that has to do with the specimen and where it was collected. For water chemistry, that includes things about the water temperature and if it was collected from a spring or well, what the discharge was when the sample was collected. There's location information. This is another point that we'd like to highlight. It's really important when you give us the locations we want to get in latitude and longitude. All the data delivery services we're setting up are using either the WGS84 or NAD83 for the spheroid. I guess NAD83 actually uses the GRS80 spheroid, but it's really important for us to know what your datum for the spheroid that's used for your latitude and longitude that you're reporting. And really, where the main difference it makes is if you're using a NAD27 Clark 1866 spheroid. Of course, the location's plot in a different place than if you're using a NAD83 or WGS84. NAD83 and WGS84 are essentially equivalent in the U.S. So that difference is not a terribly important thing. But if you're using NAD27 data, it's really important to note that. So please remember to populate this spatial reference system column here, so we know what the reference system is for the latitudes and longitudes. Data entry source. So there's analytical metadata, the analysis source, and also the data entry source, which was called information source in that other template. So once again, they're not entirely consistent. But the way this sheet is set up then is there's this basic properties out here to column AJ, and then the idea would be is that you would take your analysis suite, which would be this collection of stuff here, from one of these different suites, and that would get appended on at the end here, and that would be the actual schema for the data delivery. We're also developing in here a dictionary of the various analytes, which has been another time sink, trying to come up with some clear description of what these things are supposed to be, and also the description of what the units are that would be used for delivering them. We've also got a similar kind of template we're working on for the whole rock chemistry. Other things, let's see. So they're grouped in any given template. There's conventions for each of the columns on what the units need to be. So again, there's a distinction here between the data compilation, where you might have a separate column that allows you to have different units for different rows in a given report. But for the data delivery, in order to make life easier for the data users, we want to have all the units be the same in a given data set. So each one of the data delivery packages will use the same units for each constituent in that data set. We're also the groups related analytes, and also there's not technique. The analysis procedure method is not reported for each analyte. So what that means is that if you have one specimen where you've done different kinds of analyses for different constituents, those would get reported in different observation features. Within each observation feature, you report the analytes that are the results of one procedure. Finally, the other thing we've had to wrestle with was how to deal with things like below detection or not detected. And what we're doing is using negative numbers as codes to indicate those situations, which would make it, that allows us to keep the actual result columns as numeric fields, but also makes it possible to indicate when something is below detection or not detected, as opposed to just not analyzed for. And the notes in the templates will explain those applications. So I'm going to skip over that, and I think with that, let's see, we might break. Ryan, have you been getting any questions? Okay. Are there any questions? Let's see, how would we field that? Seeing hands raised. Yeah. Aha. Okay, let's unmute. Stephen, we should be able to hear you now. Stephen Schenk there? Nope, maybe that's left over from earlier. All righty. Well, let's have a look at the new website then. And it's the same URL, just looks different. So what we're going to do is zip over to stategeothermaldata.org, your favorite web destination. So this is the new layout. I like to kudos to Pam Berry Santos here. She's not in the room here, but she's done a great job and put together what's a pretty good looking and nicely functional website. What I want to do is log in as a regular user here. So, well, actually, let's start without logging in. The headings up here, I think, are the same as you should be used to from the other one. There's just the home site here. We're spinning up, when we get data in, we try to post stuff here, so your name appears in print, gives you fame and fortune. There's some new stuff here, which is based on some RSS feeds. Quick links are probably where most of the action will be. There's three fairly important ones that we're dealing with, one of which is the content model templates. That takes you straight to the page here, the web page that has the content models on it. You probably noticed there aren't as many listed here. We've rearranged things a little bit now, so all the templates that have to do with the borehole data are grouped in one page here. And the breadcrumbs didn't do what I would want. Okay, add that to the. These are the links through to the templates that have been there. There's also the discussion and the other stuff that's been here before. So all this content has just been transported from the other site. There's not really anything particularly new in terms of the content, just the layout. In case you haven't noticed, in the last week or so, we've added templates for geologic map data delivery for geologic units, contacts and faults. If you're working on delivering geologic data, these templates are based on the NCGMP 09 database, and which is also compatible with the GeoCML flat file format that they call thematic view. So we're trying to foster some convergence between these data delivery procedures for geologic map data. And those of you that are going to DMT in Richmond, Virginia, or it's at William and Mary College, wherever that is in Virginia, we'll hear more about that. We also have, there's a new version of the borehole template, and we have, how did I end up here again? So we also have posted the earthquake hypocenter template. Is out there for those of you that are doing earthquakes. So those are the data templates. If we zip home, probably the most important thing here for a lot of you will be we've added a function for uploading files. So what the idea here is we want to change the procedure that we've been using. A lot of you have been emailing files in, and that's been working reasonably well, except for when absent-minded people like me forget to put the file somewhere and pass it off to somebody to work on it. We've lost a few files. We want to try to avoid having that happen. So we've got this file upload capacity here now that you can use for getting a sample data, sending in deliverables, but also for your reporting requirements for sending in the reports. And the way this works is if you click on that upload, if you're not already logged in, it will ask you ask you to log in. So you go ahead and log in, and I'm going to log in with just a user account that should give you the same kind of functionality that you would see as a regular member. So this is where the upload. You give the file a title. You'll see there's some red asterisks here next to some of these fields. Those are the required fields. So you have to give it a title. You have to say what state you're coming from. And one of the more important things here is you have to select a category. And this is important because depending on what the category is, that determines who gets notified about the file being there. So test data would be if you're sending us sample data. A deliverable submission would be as if you're actually sending us final data. Statements of work, subrecipient quarterly reports, the ARA job reports. So you select one of these, and then you find the file that you want to upload. So you can browse and just find your file wherever it is. It comes up there eventually, and then you can upload it, and this puts it on the server. And then it's there. I think you have to save. Don't forget to save.
No.
Oh, you can add notes, but they're optional. But if you're sending in a report or data or something, it's always good to add some notes here. Whoever gets notified about the file will see those and help us to figure out what it's about. Because you're logged in, we'll know who it came from, so we can contact you if we have any questions. You save the file, and what will happen then is the right people for that kind of file category will get notified that a file's been uploaded, and we can handle it. Anything else I should add there? Kim, Diane, anybody?
Everyone should have received an email with information on their username and how to log in. Currently, the usernames are your first initial of your first name and your last name, all lowercase. And the password right now is just password. So once you log in, you can edit your profile, which will provide you with the ability to revise your password. If for some reason you didn't get an email, contact me, Kim, and I'll work with Pam to make sure that you do receive one.
So what we've done is I think we went through all the people who were registered on our existing stategeothermaldata.org and added them, and then also we're checking to make sure that everyone who is registered with the Google group also has an account here. So if you didn't have an account in one of those places, more than likely you won't have one here, and please contact Kim to get set up. She mentioned if you want to do, when you log in the first time, what you'll want to do is go to this Members tab, and then you can go to your account profile here, and you can edit your profile. And this is where you can change your username if you don't like your username. This is actually the name that you'll use for logging in, so be careful to remember what you changed it to. You can put in puts in your current password if you want to change something, what your email address is. If you want to change your password, you can change it to a new one. You can change your state, I guess. That's interesting. You can have a signature file, some other fun stuff. You can upload a picture so we know what you look like. Please do that if you happen to have a little picture. It is kind of handy. Makes it we have a little better idea of who we're talking to. And then your first name and last name. And this is useful for showing up in the listings that we get for who's been sending us stuff, and also your time zone and some other stuff. So you can go in and change this anytime when you're logged in.
And just as a note, it was emailed out to you all, but this website and the contact information on this website will be replacing the Google group. So we're not adding one more thing for you to remember or to access.
The other handy thing here that I like is you can link accounts. So you can actually set this up by linking, and I think there's a bug right now. Oh no, it is working. So you can sign in using one of your existing accounts. So for instance, I've been logging in using my Google account. So you set up this linked account. You'll get a little thing that'll come up from that other provider asking you if you want to, if it's okay. Oh look, we're unable to compete. That's right, because this is all, I'm actually not logged in as myself here, so it's already set up. But if you want to do that, if you have one of those Yahoo or Google or something like that, then you go to this linked account tab and you can link that. And then when you want to log in, you can go to the login tab and you can sign in using, in this case it remembers who I am because I'm already logged into Google in my browser. And so then you don't have to remember all the username and password stuff, which is handy. So that's a good feature too that I like. Yeah, we have a job listing. So if you, this right now, all the jobs listed here are at the Arizona survey, but this is meant to be available to anyone in the project. So if you're looking to hire someone, this is another place you can put postings for jobs that are out there that'll get scraped and found by the search engines and maybe help you find people you need to do your geothermal work. There's some forums in here. Right now, these are new threads can only be started, I think, by administrators, but anybody who has a login can come in here and post a comment. I'm not logged in right now, but if you're logged in, you can post a comment on any one of these threads in the forums. We'll try to keep adding to the FAQs. There are some here now. That should keep growing. The other important thing here is the file repository. So there's this file repository that you see on the main list of tabs here is a public repository. So these are files that are available to anyone. If you log in, I'm going to log in as me. I think that shouldn't be too different from what that other one would see. What you'll see if you go over to the member tab here is there's a file repository with all files. So this shows not just the public files. You can see over here they're public or private, but you'll also see files that are project specific that are only intended to be accessed by project participants. So if you want to get at some of those files, you'll have to remember to log in. And I believe that's about it for the website here. Anything else I should mention about that? Okay. And I think that about wraps it up for what I wanted to talk about. Oh, Ryan's got something. Oh, there's a question. Okay, let's see. What? From Timothy? Oh, sorry. Okay. That's weird. Okay, how and where will state geothermal data be integrated with federal geothermal data? Good question, Harvey. We are working with Colin Williams, who's working on the National Geothermal Assessment, and they've actually given us at least one data set so far of stuff they've compiled from Long Valley, and we've been working with Jacob D'Angelo, who's been doing a lot of the sort of nuts and bolts work with Colin there. But the USGS is actually one of the DOE collaborators on in the National Geothermal Data System because of some confusion about their funding cycle or something. I don't think they ended up actually having a contract with DOE this year. But the idea is that's will be happening by communicating with each other. And we're also working with Sky Bristol, and they're setting up a USGS CSW catalog that'll be one of the nodes in the catalog system that we can be harvesting metadata between. So that'll be the points of integration will be the metadata will be interoperable between the two systems, and that we're working with Colin and his group to try to ensure that they set up their data sets using the same services and conventions that we're using for the state geothermal data. Whose email address do we send new user account requests? Those will go to Kim. And Kim, is there some way? Let's see. Oh yeah, that's another thing I might point out here. If you're logged in, if you're not logged in, so let me log out. And if you go to the, okay. You have to be logged in to see this. So you'll have to send a request to Kim at kim.patten, P-A-T-T-E-N,
at azgs.az.gov, or you can also hit the Contact Us link.
This one? Oh yeah, look at that. And go Project Coordinator, Kim Patten. And actually, if you want to send an email to me, I'm also listed here as a category. So that's probably the quickest and easiest thing to do.
Right.
So you can send stuff straight to Kim or to me directly from this contact. There's also job postings to add, project inquiry, and website feedback that go to somebody else. I'm not actually sure who gets those, but anyway, so that's the way to contact. Can you discuss measurement procedures in the BHT template? So let's switch back over there. And so there's a measurement procedure here, and what we've been using this for and what the intention was here is that because borehole temperatures are provided from a variety of different sources. I mean, probably the most common thing we're dealing with are maximum temperatures that are recorded on standard E-logs that we get. So you have a gamma ray log or a neutron density log or something like that, and the loggers will record the maximum temperature. And as I understand it, there's just a little thermistor on the logging tool that is a maximum recording thermistor. They don't actually record a continuous temperature log. So it records the hottest temperature anywhere in the hole, and the assumption is always that's at the bottom of the hole. So that's one measurement procedure, would be maximum temperature recorded by logging tool. In other cases, we actually have temperature logs where somebody has actually gone to the well with the intention of determining the geothermal structure in that well, and they'll run an actual, some kind of temperature measuring device. So the measurement procedure would say what was used, a Wheatstone bridge, was it downhole measuring, was it a device that came uphole? I mean, there's 3 or 4 different kinds of devices that are used for measuring temperatures, subsurface temperatures. So in the procedure, you'd want to say what kind of instrument was used, and maybe if there was any specifics about how fast the tool is run up or down the hole. Usually, if somebody is actually measuring temperatures for geothermal purposes, they'll be a lot more careful about it than the standard maximum temperature that gets recorded with a logging tool in a log run. I suppose a lot of the standard well logs will list, what the tool rate was and some other information that you might include in the measurement procedure. But in general, those maximum temperatures, which we get called bottom hole temperatures in general, they're sort of fuzzy data to begin with, and it's not clear that it's worth spending a lot of effort compiling all the details about the logging run off the well logs. Particularly when if you look at 4 or 5 logs from the same well, what we've seen is that they'll all have the same maximum temperature on them, which said to me that more than likely the logger just they just ran the temperature device down there with one of those and then just copied the number over on the other ones or something like that. Other measurement procedures, I think those, well, yeah, actually, no, there is, we've run into, with water wells, a lot of times what will happen is you just bail the well, right? You start pumping the water out of the well and measuring the temperature of the water and coming out of the well until it stabilizes. Have I got that right, Diane? And so what your measurement procedure there is you're just measuring the temperature of the water, which then should represent the aquifer temperature, but unless you know the details about where the well is perforated and if it's coming from some specific interval, you don't really know where exactly in the subsurface that temperature represents. So another measurement procedure is just measured temperature of water produced from well. Let's see, Tim, does that answer your question, I hope? If you have any others, you can email me or we can talk on the phone or something. And maybe we should try and clarify that in the notes here. Actually, let's see what we've got here. Just for kicks. Oops, that's the wrong thing. It's going to waste some time. Go away. Now. How the measurement was made, instrumentation, logging, correction, or extrapolation process. Yeah, so actually if you're dealing with corrected temperatures, you'd want to the measurement procedure would include describing how the corrections were made, how time since circulation was determined, if that was reported. So, the idea is report as much information as you can about the background for the data to help somebody evaluate how to use that data and whether they believe it. Another question from Margaret. Thomas, can you discuss metadata requirements for geotiffs, georeferenced map imagery? So a metadata record for a geotiff, if it's spatially referenced, would, let's see, I think that's certainly something that you can do with ISO metadata. But in terms of how that would be set up in our metadata template, there's a bounding box, so you would report the extent would be the bounding box, and then probably in the resource type, it would be important to indicate that it was actually a georeferenced image that included the georeferencing information with the image. So geotiffs are nice because they actually bundle the information for the georeferencing in the file, but there's a lot of times you'll get a separate little world file, they call it, will come with the image that has the georeferencing information, which makes it a little bit easier, more tricky to keep those things together. So the short answer is I would actually have to look at the metadata template and think for a minute, but I'm pretty sure the important things would be to include the bounding box for the georeferenced part of the map, and then in the resource type to indicate that it was actually a georeferenced image, not just an image. And again, if there's more questions about that, email me or let me know, and we should try and get something on the FAQs about that. So, are there any other questions? Let's see. I don't see any coming in. And we've been on the phone for a while. Sorry about all that confusion at the beginning. It annoyed me. I hope it didn't annoy you too much. And we'll talk again soon. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and we'll get a transcript online, hopefully relatively soon. And onward through the murk. Thanks a lot. Bye now.